Summer of 1864, brought unimaginable horror to the American South. Private Prescott Tracy's journey ended not in reunion, but in nightmare after 6 grueling days trapped in a suffocating boxcar. Surviving on mere crackers and scraps of meat, he emerged into the sweltering heat of Georgia. The Union soldiers stood in a long line of fellow prisoners, all staring at massive wooden walls stretching 15 feet high, constructed from Georgia pines, that seemed endless in every direction. As the enormous gate creaked open, Prescott's eyes beheld a sight that would haunt him forever. Before him lay Andersonville, officially named Camp Sumter, a place that would earn its reputation as the deadliest prison in Civil War history. What awaited inside those walls defied human comprehension. Tens of thousands of men, barely recognizable as human beings, shuffled through a wasteland of suffering. The prison sat 125 miles south of Atlanta, hidden deep in Confederate territory, where escape was impossible and hope died quickly. The camp covered 16 2 acres, shaped in a parallelogram, split by a muddy creek and swamp. No trees provided shade, no structures offered shelter. The land was completely barren, exposed to the merciless southern sun. Initially designed for 10,000 prisoners, it already held 28,000 souls by Prescott's arrival. With more arriving daily, the overcrowding was immediate and deliberate. Confederate General John Winder had ordered this prison built far from Richmond, close to railway lines, creating what he called a grand receptacle for captured enemy soldiers. What he created instead was a monument to human suffering, where death became routine and survival seemed miraculous. The 3 basic human needs, food, water, shelter, were systematically denied at Andersonville. Prisoners received no tents, no barracks, nothing men stripped naked, stretching their uniforms overhead as makeshift covers that provided little protection. These crude shelters, called shebangs, were cobbled together from scraps, rags, and desperation. In Georgia's brutal climate, temperatures soared past 95 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, while humidity made every breath feel like drowning. At night, temperatures rarely dropped below 80 degrees. Men baked under the relentless sun, their Union uniforms degrading into rags that barely covered their skeletal frames. The prison's only water source was a narrow creek, just 6 feet wide and ankle deep. Running through a black swamp, this same stream served every purpose: washing, cooking, drinking, and sewage disposal. Confederate guards built a cookhouse upstream regularly, dumping rotten meat parts and garbage into the water. The creek ran dark with silt, filled with Stump's human waste and festering food scraps. Prisoners filtered this toxic sludge through their shirts, knowing each sip might kill them. Disease spread like wildfire: typhoid fever, dysentery, and countless waterborne illnesses claimed lives by the dozens daily. Food was equally nightmarish. Each prisoner received meager rations of cornmeal, occasionally supplemented with rancid meat containing organs and intestines twice weekly. 2 teaspoons of rice replaced pork twice monthly. 2 teaspoons of molasses served as a treat. Distribution was chaotic and unequal. Some men received nothing, as more prisoners flooded in by hundreds. Daily rations shrank further. Severe starvation became universal. New arrivals described being greeted by walking skeletons covered in filth and vermin. Photographs from this era, some of history's earliest, captured haunting images of living men reduced to bone and skin, their faces showing unimaginable suffering. Beyond starvation and disease, Andersonville imposed additional torments. The stockade fence wasn't the true boundary. Prisoners faced an invisible line called the deadline, marked 19 feet inside the fence perimeter. Confederate guards positioned in elevated pigeon roofs had orders to shoot anyone crossing this line, regardless of reason. No warnings given, no mercy shown. Private Prescott Tracy witnessed a man named Roberts washing his face near the deadline when he slipped his head, falling across the boundary. Other prisoners shouted warnings, but too late. Confederate sentries fired immediately, killing Roberts where he fell. This deadly barrier further reduced already impossibly cramped living space. Death became routine at Andersonville. At its peak, the prison averaged 96 deaths per day. Bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. The Confederate Surgeon General visited for 1 hour, vomiting twice from the overwhelming stench, and contracting severe flu that manifested by the time he reached Richmond. His report described conditions as absolutely horrifying, yet nothing changed. If Andersonville's prisoner population were counted as a city, its 26 acres would rank as the 5th largest in the entire Confederacy. Over 33,000 men crammed in a space designed for less than half that number. The smell was unbearable. Human waste covered every inch of ground. The entire camp reeked of death, disease, and decay. Even before overcrowding reached its peak, the odor was described as beyond human tolerance. Guards positioned outside the walls could smell the prison from hundreds of yards away. Inside, prisoners had no escape from the assault on their senses. Every breath was torture. Every moment brought fresh horror. Men prayed for death to end their suffering, while others clung desperately to life, hoping for liberation that seemed impossible. As if external horrors weren't enough, prisoners faced violence from within. A gang of approximately 200 men, calling themselves the Andersonville Raiders, terrorized fellow prisoners. These criminals stole jewelry, money, food, and clothing, beating and murdering anyone who resisted, armed with clubs and ruthless determination. The raiders made life unbearable for prisoners, already struggling to survive despite small numbers. They dominated through brutality and fear in response. Another group formed the Regulators. These prisoners banded together to fight the raiders' tyranny after fierce conflicts. The Regulators defeated the criminal gang and established order through vigilante justice. They elected a judge, selected juries from newly arrived prisoners, ensuring impartiality, and held formal trials. Raiders found guilty of lesser crimes faced 3 punishments: running a gauntlet while being beaten with sticks, wearing heavy ball and chain, were being locked in wooden stocks. The 6 ringleaders received death sentences. A gallows was constructed in the camp center, and the executions were carried out while thousands watched. By July 1864, conditions deteriorated so catastrophically that Captain Henry Wirtz, the Confederate officer overseeing Andersonville, took desperate measures. He paroled 5 prisoners to deliver a petition signed by most inmates, begging Union General Ulysses S. Grant to reinstate the prisoner exchange program. Months earlier, Grant had ended exchanges because the Confederacy refused to release black prisoners under the same conditions as white soldiers. Despite the petition's urgency and the signatures of thousands of dying men, Grant denied the request. His decision was principled but deadly. The prison population swelled beyond 30,000. Men continued dying by the hundreds, trapped in hell with no escape. In April 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox, Virginia, ending the Civil War. Liberation came to Andersonville in May, but Union soldiers arriving to take control were utterly horrified. One described the scene as human skeletons, amid hellish scenes of desolation weakened. Emaciated prisoners needed immediate transport home to the north. Many were sent to Vicksburg, Mississippi to board steamboats heading up the Mississippi River to Illinois. Freedom seemed finally within reach, but tragedy struck one final time. Nearly 2,000 former Andersonville prisoners were crammed onto the steamboat Sultana, which had a maximum capacity of just 376 people. Before loading prisoners, the ship suffered a boiler malfunction, requiring extensive repair, however. The captain ordered a quick fix. Instead of proper repairs, eager to collect lucrative payment from Union officers who paid per prisoner transported, this greed proved catastrophic. 2 days into the journey, the overloaded boilers exploded, hurling bodies into the icy Mississippi River. During one of its worst floods, smokestacks collapsed, crushing men between decks. At least 1,000 Andersonville survivors who had endured unspeakable horrors died in the Sultana disaster, drowning or burning just days after liberation. Captain Henry Worse was tried by military tribunal for war crimes. Former prisoners testified about abusive treatment and specific acts of cruelty, his defense argued. He had pleaded with Confederate government for more food and better conditions, but was ignored. The tribunal found no excuse for his negligence. On November 10, 1865, Worse was executed, one of only 3 men executed for Civil War war crimes today. Andersonville stands as a National Historic Site and cemetery of approximately 45,000 Union soldiers imprisoned there during its year-and-a-half operation. Roughly 13,029% died, making it one of the war's deadliest locations. Despite never be